Good morning, everyone. Mic check, mic check. I'm pretty sure everything's good. Should be all set. Good morning, everyone. Hope you guys are doing well. Today is February the 4th. It is a Wednesday today. Overall markets actually took a tumble yesterday. We ended up pushing towards the downside, kind of rejecting off key levels right off the bat. QQQ pushing down a decent amount here, a decent tech rotation out of most of these tech names. So we'll kind of talk about this here. Coming into today, NVIDIA was one of the main ones towards the downside. We had a couple other names here, of course, that pushed lower. We'll talk about all this and what the game plan is moving forward. What is up, everyone? Good morning. Good morning, ANL, B Roots, Cody, KO, Victor, Robert, I am TW. What's up, YN, Deuce, Marlin, sorry, Mary, Frank, Wakey, Lamed, Costa, Detecto, Cinna, Juan, 50, Martin, Under. What's up, everyone? Hope you guys are doing well. Good morning. Good morning. Let me pull up the economic calendar and then we'll head on to the charts. So as you can see here, this is the economic calendar coming into today. What we do have is some red folder news at 8:15. So in about 10 minutes here, ADP non-farm enrollment change. And then we have our ISM services that is going to be at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have unemployment tomorrow that is tentative. We still have the government shutdown, which shouldn't last too long, but we'll see how long this lasts. And then, of course, tomorrow we do have consumer sentiment, which is going to be at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So this is what we have for the red folder news events. As for some other news events that we do have, we had some earnings yesterday, primarily AMD. We had a couple other earnings as well. The main ones today, we have Google, and then we also have Amazon on Thursday. So as you can see, AMD taking a little bit of a tumble here, down about 9%. We'll talk about the levels here in a second. Let's first start off on the ES and the NQ. So as you can see for the overall markets, the key levels that we have marked out yesterday was our previous day highs. So we kind of had this candle low marked out. We also had this candle high. What I wanted to see was the potential kind of break above our previous day highs for continuation. Ultimately rejected off this level. And we had a fairly sharp reversal all the way back down towards the downside. So right now you can see we end up having this nice bounce off our last week's lows. And now we're essentially back in between the middle of the range. So coming into market open here today, the key levels that I'm going to have marked out on the QQQ in specific, we'll head on to the Q's chart here in a second. But what I'm going to have marked out is the area that we broke down from. As you can see here, level of support that ended up turning into resistance and pushing towards the downside. You can see another touch here. And we also have another touch here in the pre-market as well. So coming into today, if you do want to see some upside here in the markets, the break above our 6960s for a potential push back up and towards the Friday's highs of last week. If we do ultimately reject off this level, we can see a push down in towards our pre-market lows and potentially below, which of course is all the way back down in towards our last week's lows. With this big push towards the downside here on the ES, and now we're having this nice bounce back up and towards the middle of the range. What I would like to see is a potential move down in towards your previous day close, and then potentially, as I mentioned, your pre-market lows here. If we're looking at the SPY chart, as you can see, we just kind of went from your all-time highs all the way back down in towards our last week's lows. So if we're looking at the last week's worth of price action, we ended up having a pretty big drop. This was on Thursday of last week, and you can see a little bit more consolidation. Monday, nice push towards the upside. Tuesday, pretty big rejections, and then it pushed all the way back down in towards that 686. And now you can see some buyers are stepping in. We're kind of back inside of the middle of the range. If we kind of just mark out this general area, back inside the middle of the range, which is this 692. So as you can see here for SPY, at least moving forward, our key level support is our 685. Key level of resistance is at 698, and then currently we're in the middle of the range, which is this 692. So the key levels, let's actually just mark out those levels currently. Let's refine some of the levels that we have marked out. So what we can mark out here is this 15-minute order block. Drag this over. You can see we have multiple touches, plus we have the all-time highs here. So if we zoom in, coming into market open, As I mentioned, the key level is just going to be this 691. If we do want to see some downside, we personally like to see a reject off this level, push down in towards our previous day close along with our pre-market lows for potential continuation lower. If we want to see some upside, the reclaim back above this 691 needs to be in play for this continuation back towards our Friday's highs of last week. So the key level to keep an eye out for coming into market open is of course going to be that 691 here on the SPY. With us being inside the middle of the range currently, we're going to be a little bit more cautious, right? Keep an eye out for the first 5 to 15 minutes to see if there's any clear direction in the markets. But at least for today, after having this nice push on Monday, pretty big drop here on Tuesday, we're going to be a little bit more cautious coming into market open here today on this SPY as of specific. The QQQ is a little bit weaker, and we'll head on to that chart here in a second. But as you can see, let's go on to the NQ chart. You'll see that the NQ is a lot weaker. So for this QQQ along with the NQ, you can see key levels that we have marked out yesterday was our Friday's highs. So you can see we have multiple touches here. Ultimately, we're not able to hold above this level for continuation. We actually broke underneath. So yesterday, I had a neutral stance in the market, actually leaning a little bit more bullish right off the bat. But within the first 5 minutes, big drop towards the downside. Same thing on Monday, right? Within the first 5 minutes, it's a good indication of where price is going to head for the day, right? Big drop within the first 5 minutes gave us a good scenario that was most likely going to end up heading lower since no buyer stepped in, and you can see pretty big push towards the downside. So as you can see right here, the key levels that we have marked out are last week's lows, 25,560. You can see we have multiple touches, touch here, multiple touches. So coming into market open here today, what we're going to keep an eye out on is our last week's lows. If we do want to maintain some downside, rejection off this level for this continued push back towards the downside, down in towards our overnight lows, along with our low that we created here for this week. We're going to be looking for shorts underneath our 25,560. If you do want to see any sort of mean reversion, so in this case, the QQQ is a little bit weaker than the SPY. There's a bigger tech rotation. You can see the Qs is down 1.5%. SPY is only down 0.85. SPY is also inside the middle of the range, whereas the QQQ is closer to the low of the range. So for the Qs, upside would be above our last week's lows, reclaim back above this level, but as I mentioned, the Qs is a lot weaker. So the QQQ, keep an eye out on your 25,560. As for the SPY chart, this is a good chart, as you can see right here. Rejection off of our 628 yesterday. Big push towards the downside, all the way towards that last week's lows, 619. Compared to the SPY, we actually ended up bouncing off this level. This was much later into the day. But you can see the Qs well underneath our 619. Which you can see we have multiple touches. Touch on Monday, we had a touch here yesterday, ultimately got underneath, and we end up having some nice continuation lower. For the Qs moving forward, keep an eye out on your 619. If you do want to see some downside, potential pop and fade here off our level for this continuation down in towards our previous day lows and potentially below, which is our 609. Another possible scenario for some downside is the break underneath that 615 for this continuation down in towards our previous day lows here as well. If we want to see some upside, it's going to have to be above our 619. Upside is going to be a little bit more difficult on the QQQ, but of course this is not out of the picture this week. A lot of the theses have actually been the complete opposite. So I'm leaning a little bit more towards the downside. It very much well could flip back above our 619 and reverse back towards the high. So keep an eye out on both sides. As I mentioned, first 5 to 15 minutes is going to be key. And we'll see the reaction that we have. We also do have some red folder news later into the session, so that is something to keep in mind. So this is what we have for the QQQ along with the SPY coming into today. Now let's go on to the SMH. Let's go into the SMH and the IWM, and then we'll head on to some of the tech names here. If you guys do have any charts or any tickers, you guys can now drop them in the chat. If you guys are enjoying this so far, I appreciate if you guys drop a like. If you guys haven't joined the free daily watch list, that of course is in the description below as well. Did your trading get affected a little bit when you first started trading in front of others in the beginning? facing the issue. So now facing the issue. So how can we get back in the flow state? Thank you for everything you're doing. So good. Actually, when I started trading in front of people at the very start, it was actually a little bit nerve wracking, but ultimately I actually trade a lot better now because I focus on good quality setups. Because when you know someone's watching, you're going to focus on the best trades possible. You're going to focus on high quality setups, so you're not going to try and force trades. It's something like kind of if someone's to watch you over your shoulder, right? Because you know someone's watching. Let's say if I was to watch you trade, or one of your family members was to watch you trade, like sometimes you might second guess or you might think over a couple times before placing a trade just because they're watching. Right, it might get you out of the flow state at the very start, but once you get used to it, right, you'll try and take more high quality setups, and you'll only be focused on really the best quality setups possible. Okay, let's go on to the SMH. So as you can see, the SMH, there's a little bit of the semiconductors pulling back. We end up having a nice bounce here on Monday, but ultimately rejecting off of key levels. And as you can see, 412 all the way back down in towards that 398. So SMH, a little bit of a pullback here. You had a couple of the semis pulling back, NVIDIA pulling back in specific. We had Intel, MU, a bunch of these ones pulling back here as well. Of course, now in the after hours, we're having AMD pullback as well. So for the SMH, a little bit of a pullback here towards the downside. Now, as you can see, we're actually underneath our key levels, which is your low that we created on Monday. We can actually mark this out. Let me actually just refine this level so I can mark out our last week's key level, and I'll drag this down in towards that Monday's lows. So key levels moving forward here on the SMH. You can see we have multiple touches around this general area. What we like to see is a reaction that we have off your 400 key psych. If we reject off this level, we're going to see this continue push down in towards our pre-market lows and below. The reclaim back above this level, we can see this potential push back up and towards our 406 and above. But with now the overall indices making a new low for the week, SMH making a brand new low, I am leaning a little bit more bearish. So a little bit more bearish here now on most of these major indices just because they're breaking underneath your Monday's lows on a Tuesday. Plus now we're staying a little bit more heavy here as well. So keep an eye out on this 400 key psych level. As for the IWM, this is actually really the only indice that is relatively holding up compared to the overall markets. You can see multiple touches here right off our key resistance turn into support level. As long as you can maintain above your 258, you would like to see IWM slowly push back up and towards that all-time highs key level. If you go back onto the hourly chart, as you can see, buyers actually defended this 258, and now we're actually back above this 263. Now what I like to see, 263 bounce, or of course now above or 264.50 for this push up and towards that 267. So that's what we have here on IWM. Other levels now we can have marked out. We can just mark out this previous day highs for potential continuation higher. Okay, now let's go on to some tech names that we have today. First things first, let's go into Tesla. So Tesla, as you can see, kind of consolidating right around our key level of support. So as you can see right here, if we were to just draw at a level, multiple touches on Tesla the day after earnings low. You can see multiple touches yesterday, multiple touches here on Monday as well. Tesla is still staying heavy, right? You can see most pops have been shorted ever since we had earnings. Right, a couple lower highs are being built, and now we're now essentially staying heavy. You can see lower highs are being built. We're creating this bottom here. If we can break underneath on Tesla, we can see some downside coming into market open. So keep an eye out on Tesla coming into today. Key level that we have marked out is, of course, that 415. What we could be looking for today here on Tesla is a couple scenarios. If you do want to see some downside here in the markets, number one scenario is going to be the break underneath our previous day lows. You can see multiple touches for continuation towards the downside. Right, potential previous day low retest right off the bat. Or you can be even more aggressive as it's pushing down in towards that previous day lows. You can even look for the previous day low break just because we are trading towards the downside. Another possible scenario is some sort of potential kind of pop within the first few minutes. And then we could be looking for continuation towards the downside, either right off the bat for that pop and fade, or some sort of opening range break to look for this continuation towards the downside. So for Tesla, keep an eye out on this really pop and fade or potentially underneath previous day lows. I personally wait. If you want to wait for extra confirmation underneath your previous day lows is key, because you can see touch here, we bounced multiple times. So it very much well could bounce once again. So wait for either the break underneath, or if there was a lot of relative weakness coming into market open. So your previous day lows, 415 here is going to be key. As I mentioned, this is a very key level support, so very much well could find some buyers once again right off that 415. So I'd much rather wait for the break underneath to be extra cautious on Tesla. But that's going to be the key level coming into today. If you are looking at this from a daily chart perspective, we have just been staying heavy, right? We've just been staying heavy. Every single pop has been shorted, right? Lower highs are now just being built. We are finding a little bit of all right, we should be back up. Sorry, cut out for a bit. We should be good. The bit rate's back as well. So yeah, if you guys have any issues with the lag, you guys can just restart the stream and everything should be good. But yes, as for Tesla, as I was talking about, if we can break underneath this 416, potentially we do have some room towards the downside, all the way towards this 388. So keep that in mind if we're looking at, yeah, just keep an eye out on your 415 coming to market open. Tesla, for me, I'm leaning a little bit more towards the downside just because the market's heading lower. But as you guys know, Tesla usually likes to do its own thing compared to the market. So the market could very much well drop and Tesla could bounce and have the buyer step in. Tesla's the only ticker that does that. You can actually see in this case, the market's down about 1.5%. Tesla was the only ticker that was green yesterday. Let's go on to NVIDIA. So NVIDIA was a trade that was solid yesterday towards the downside. Key levels that we have marked out was at 186. So we had the top of the range. We essentially had the middle of the range, and then we had this low right here. Once we broke back underneath this 186, underneath our previous day lows here as well, a lot of relative weakness here on NVIDIA. Next level, major level, all the way down towards that 178. So if we're looking at NVIDIA coming into today and moving forward, we're actually already back down at our key level of support, which in this case is at 178. So we're back at our key level support here. If we want to look for shorts, we'd like to see that break below our previous day lows or some sort of opening drive play towards the downside. But we are at a key level of support. So let's go back onto the lower time frames here and kind of lay out the scenarios for NVIDIA coming to market open. So we have our previous day lows. If you want to see some shorts coming to market open, personally, it's going to be underneath our 178 for continuation towards the downside. Or another possible scenario here now is some sort of pre-market high rejection for this pop and fade for a push down in towards that previous day lows. As for NVIDIA, let's see the reaction within the first kind of 5 to 15 minutes here as well. As I mentioned, you do see some nice buyers kind of stepping in off this 178. So if we do want to see some shorts, we have to either wait for the break underneath that 178 or look for a low risk potential pop and fade right off the bat. As for other key levels that I have marked out here, yeah, these are primarily my key levels. We can just mark out kind of this up close candle, which also happens to be our previous day close here as well. We can mark out this 180.50. Upside on NVIDIA is only going to occur kind of above our pre-market highs and also above our previous day close here as well. As for AMD, let's talk about this one. This is going to be one of my main watches coming into market open. So if we go into the daily time frame, as for AMD, you can see nice kind of consolidation. This is our key level support, and you can see this is our clear level of resistance. We just essentially went from the highs all the way down towards the lows. Nice bounce coming into 2026, rejection right off our all-time highs, and now we're having a little bit of a pullback. So for AMD, now the key level is going to be all the way down and towards our 200 key psych. So that's going to be one of the main objectives we'll be looking for AMD moving forward is going to be the 200 key psychological level. So for AMD, Now we have a couple key levels of support. We have our 215, and of course we have that 226. If we do want to see a push lower, potential rejection off this 226 for continuation, or now it's going to be underneath this 215 for this push down and towards that 200. So for AMD, if we are looking to potentially go for look for some downside coming into today after earnings, what we're going to need is an IV flush. We've actually haven't had an earnings play this earnings season so far. A lot of the earnings haven't been as clear. There haven't been too many opening drive play setups on earnings. So for AMD, the key level, as I mentioned, is going to be this 226. If we do want to see some downside, we need to see the pop and then the fade off our 226 for this continuation towards the downside. So this is going to be the number one scenario here for AMD for a move lower, is going to be this potential rejection off your 226 coming into today. As for Apple, the key levels that we have, Apple's the only one that's relatively holding up compared to the markets. Key levels, as you can see, is our 270. So our 270 is our Monday's highs. If we can get above our Monday's highs coming into today. So if the markets do want to bounce, Apple's going to be my main watch towards the upside. Everything else has been a little bit weaker on the higher time frame. So for Apple, it's going to be the break above our 270, hold above our 270 for a push up and towards our previous day highs, or now, of course, above our previous day highs, we can see continuation. So we have Apple for some upside. The rest of the names are fairly neutral or even leaning towards the downside. As for Google, this one has earnings tonight. So not really too much to talk about here on Google. We'll kind of touch up on this a little bit tomorrow, but key level, of course, is the 346. As for Microsoft, so Microsoft, as I mentioned, this is one of the tickers that are weak on the higher time frames. I mentioned we have this daily gap here as well. So you can see for Microsoft, breaking underneath this daily gap, really next main objective, all the way down in towards that 394. So for Microsoft, once it broke underneath our key level of support, which is at 422, nice drop right off the bat, just continuation lower. Now the key level here for Microsoft is going to be that previous day lows. So we can mark this out. 409 previous day lows. If you do want to see continuation, potential pop and fade for a push lower, now of course underneath our previous day lows for this continuation towards the downside. So multiple kind of scenarios here for Microsoft. This one is still bearish here on the higher time frames with that daily gap. So we do have some more room all the way down in towards really that 396. As for Meta, this one rejecting off our 716. You can see multiple touches here. Now we're just kind of filling the gap all the way back down in towards our 680. So for for Meta, rejection off that 716, and now we're breaking underneath key levels. We're most likely just going to gravitate in towards the high that we created once we had earnings of last week. So for Meta, key levels today, keep an eye out on your previous day lows, break underneath, you can see a push down in towards your 676. That's what you have for Meta. And then as for Amazon, this one does have earnings as well. You can see a lot of consolidation before earnings. We'll see what shapes up. This one has earnings on Thursday. Very much well could hit all-time highs. So we'll see what happens, right? This one is on Thursday. We'll wait for a potential after earnings play. And then for Netflix, this one actually finally broke underneath our key level of support. You can see multiple touches. And now we're breaking underneath all the way down in towards that 80.50. So coming into market open here today, what is the game plan? We're going to go over some high beta names here in a second. We did have some red folder news as well. We had the ADP non-farm enrollment change, and we also do have the ISM services, of course, that is going to be at 10 a.m. As for the ADP, non-farm enrollment, forecasted 46K, actual 22K. So came in lower than expected. As for the overall market, a little bit of reaction here. So coming into market open, levels are fairly clear. Not previous day lows, Monday's lows and our last week's lows are going to be marked out if we want to see continued downside. As for the SPY, key level that I'm going to have marked out is just basically the middle of the range, 691. So the game plan today is if the markets do want to bounce off of key levels of support, or if the Qs wants to reclaim back above our 619, main watch is going to be Apple for a continued push towards the upside. So Apple for some upside. The rest of the tickers, if let's say the market wants to be neutral or if we want to potentially drop right off the bat, then I'm going to keep an eye out on a select few tickers. Number one, Tesla. We're going to keep an eye out on your 415 and the reaction that we have off this level. Nvidia, I like this one here as well, but we're going to have to either have that pop and fade as I mentioned, or now it's going to be underneath at 178, but I'll still keep an eye out on Nvidia. As for AMD, recently just had earnings. We'll keep an eye out on potential IV flush, but a pop and fade is in play here for this ticker as well. And then the rest of the tickers, right? Google has earnings coming up. Microsoft still in play here for that full daily gap fill. Keep an eye out on your previous day lows. And then, of course, for Amazon, this one has earnings coming up as well. And then Meta also has that full daily gap fill here as well. So a couple of names have these full daily gaps. It is Microsoft and Meta. And then the rest of the tickers, right? NVIDIA, AMD, and Tesla. These ones leaning a little bit more towards the downside, but just really going to be dependent on the overall indices themselves. So now let's go on to some other tickers here now as well. If you guys do have any charts or any tickers you'd like me to go over, you guys can now drop them in the chat. If you guys are enjoying this so far, I appreciate if you guys drop a like. If you guys haven't joined the free daily watch list, you guys can join that as well. Okay, let's go on to the charts here. Now let's first take a look at Palantir. So Palantir recently had earnings. Nice pop up in towards our key level of resistance, but ultimately right off the bat, pretty sharp rejection. So we had the market shopping Palantir right at a key level of resistance right off the bat within the first, you can see within the first 5 minutes, pretty sharp drop towards the downside. And now we're basically back in between this earnings range. So we have this earnings range here, 50% retracement for Palantir. If we can't hold above, now it's going to be our previous day lows. Next level is going to be all the way back down in towards that 151 full earnings reversal. So keep this in mind here for Palantir. If we break underneath, there's a good chance we end up just pushing down in towards that 151 and even potentially that 148. So key level today on Palantir, 154. As you can see, some of these high beta names here, hood dropping towards the downside. So a lot of these names are being rotated. That's why the Qs has been weak here as well. So a lot of tech rotation. A lot of these names kind of rotating, some of the money rotating out of these names. SoFi dropping, Hood dropping, even Palantir kind of at the lows. So you can see really the only tickers that are relatively holding up is, right, some of the semiconductors. And even some of the semis now are pulling back. They're still bullish on the higher time frames compared to something like Hood or something like SoFi, where now it's actually breaking underneath key levels of support. So for Hood, right, this one, higher time frame in the key levels that we have marked out. After dropping, it's just going to be that previous day lows. That's going to be key. You can see kind of this previous day low retest. Similar thing, SoFi, mark out the low that we created here on Monday. Now let's go on to MU. So MU, the key level that we have marked out yesterday was, of course, our 442. The break above, we can see a push towards all-time highs. The rejection, we can see a potential kind of reversal here. And that's what ended up playing out within the first 5 minutes of market open. As for MU, now this one, of course, slowing down with the rest of the semiconductors. As you can see here, for the past couple of sessions, right, we're still bullish here on the higher time frames because we're maintaining above this 404. But the momentum has definitely slowed down here on the hourly chart. Moving forward, bounce play offer 404 still is in play towards the upside. If we ultimately break underneath, then we can see a flip here and potential continuation lower. So the only level that matters is really this 408. We also have our 420 marked out here as well. So let me actually just readjust this level here on MU. I can mark this out. My favorite level here on MU is, of course, going to be our 410 previous day lows here. That's going to be the key level to keep an eye out on moving forward. If we want to see longs bounce off 410, if we want to see a push lower underneath 410 for continuation. As for TSM, another rejection off our 4,345. As for Intel, I do still like quite a bit, right? Higher time frame, still very much intact. We're basing above our key levels. We're at essentially a yearly high here. Higher lows are being built. Recently did have some earnings, but overall higher time frame still very much intact. So for Intel moving forward, key levels that we have marked out is just going to be that 50 key psych level. You can see a little bit of buyers tried stepping in yesterday, but ultimately still building up these higher lows. So for Intel, like to see the reclaim back above our 50 key psych for eventually that push back up in towards our 54. With the overall markets dropping here, I'd just be a little bit more cautious. We'd like to see the SMH reclaim back above key levels. Intel at a minimum would have to break back above our 50 key psych level, hold above this for this continuation back towards upside. So this is what we have for Intel moving forward. As for some other tickers, SNDK is still somewhat holding up here as well. You can see on the daily chart, higher lows very much still being built. And now we're back at our all-time highs. For SNDK, key levels that we have marked out is of course going to be that 677. So our 677 is going to be key. You can see multiple touches around this general area, reclaim later into the session. Moving forward, we'd just like to see SNDK maintain above our 677. Another possible scenario, of course, now is going to be above our 690 for this continued push back up and towards. Now it's going to be this all-time highs. That's what I have on SNDK. Let's go into SMCI. This one had earnings yesterday along with AMD. Nice little pop here on SMCI. It's up about 9% here. Key levels that we have is our 32 key psychological level. So our 32 key psychological level, as you can see, we have multiple touches. Now what we like to see is the break above our pre-market highs. So you can see a little bit of a touch here. If we do want to see SMCI moving forward, we like to see bounce off our 32, or now of course above our 3350 for this continuation higher. If we break back underneath, we can see a potential earnings reversal on this ticker back down in towards that 30 key psychological level. So coming into today, there's a couple tickers that we went over, a couple tickers on the tech side here as well. Now let's go on to gold and silver. So gold and silver bouncing nicely. We kind of talked about the potential mini V-shaped bounce right off our key level of resistance that turned into support. So nice little bounce here on gold. 50% retracement. Key levels that we have marked out yesterday was our 5,000 key psych level. You can see a little bit of seller step in, but once it broke above, you had this immediate retest, and now we're continuing higher. Next level on gold is going to be all the way back up in towards this level here, which is our 5160. As for silver, key level that we have marked out is this level right here. You can see nice kind of break and retest. Once we broke back above, nice reclaim. Next level here on silver, all the way back up and towards our 96. Other levels, minor levels, if you want to mark out here now, is of course this previous high. You just like to see silver slowly kind of build their way back up and towards this 95 key level. Okay, now let's go on to the game plan coming into today. So for the SPY and Qs, basically the exact same game plan as before, but we're going to keep an eye out on your last week's lows along with your Monday's lows. If the markets maintain underneath 619, I'm going to have a bearish stance coming into market open. I'm going to flip bullish if we have within the first 5 to 15 minutes. If we have a big strong push right off the bat, then I'm going to be a little bit more neutral, potentially looking for a mean reversion back up and towards your 623. But coming into market open, I'm leaning a little bit more towards the downside on the QQQ in specific underneath the 619. As for the SPY chart, I'm fairly neutral on this one, but just because the Qs is a little bit more bearish, right? I just have a 60 to 40% stance. Nothing crazy. Right, Qs a little bit weaker than the SPY. As for the SPY chart in itself, we're basically in between the middle of the range. So we're in between the middle of the range today. We're in between its previous day's range. I'm going to wait for at least minimum the first kind of 15 to 30 minutes on the SPY chart in specific, just because I don't expect clear direction right off the bat since we are in between the previous day's range. So that's something to keep in mind on the SPY and Qs. Plus, we also have some red folder news, which is going to be at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. As for the main watches today, We have Microsoft and Meta for this gap fill towards the downside. So Meta underneath our previous day low retest is in play. Microsoft, similar thing, previous day low retest is in play. As for Tesla, fairly neutral, but we'll keep an eye on the reaction that we have off our 415. NVIDIA, keep an eye out on your 180.50 along with our 178 potential rejection, or now underneath our 178 for continuation lower. AMD, potential pop and fade after earnings. We need that IV flush. As I mentioned, the only ticker that I am fairly bullish on, if the market does want to have a bounce, we can keep an eye out on Apple. Now it's going to be above our above our Monday's highs, or now above our previous day highs for continuation. As for the rest of the tickers, Google earnings coming up, Amazon earnings coming up as well. So be a little bit more hands off. As for the rest of the names, right, all these semiconductors that we're still holding up now are pulling back a little bit, like MU, SNDK still holding up, Intel still somewhat holding up. But now we're going to have a strong market bounce. Plus, the SMH is going to have to reclaim back above key levels if we do want to see any sort of potential pushback towards the upside. So, at least for today, we do have a couple more earnings. We have some red folder news. We'll see what shapes up in the markets today. The main thing here is to not have a bias coming into market open, and of course, be open to playing both sides. Right? Lately, at least the first 2 days of this week, the direction has been gauged based off the first 5 to 15 minutes of market open by using the opening range, right? Sometimes we'll use the previous day highs and previous day lows, but sometimes, right, in this case, the first 15 minutes gives us a clear direction in the markets. If we have a strong push in one direction, that's usually a good indication that we're end up going to pushing towards either the high or the low of the range for that day, just based off that first 15-minute opening range candle. So that's going to be it for me today. As I mentioned, I kind of already laid out the game plan for today. Just be open to playing both sides here in the markets. Apple, if we do see a bounce in the SPY and Qs, and we have a couple names towards the downside, Meta, Microsoft for those full daily gap fills, if we do want to head lower for today. But yeah, that is going to be it for me. I'm going to get ready for market open here now. So hopefully you guys did enjoy that. If you did, appreciate if you guys drop a like and sub. If you guys haven't joined the daily watch list, that of course is in the description below. And I will see you guys all tomorrow. All right, take care everyone. Have a great rest of the day. Peace.